After a brief hiatus, we are back on Doubling Down with Colin Sheehan here on Trust the Profits YouTube page. Unfortunately, once again, I went 1 for 2, so that bankroll is plummeting a little bit. But I have a very special new voice to bring on this week's show, so please stay tuned as we go to Oaklawn for the Essex and Whitmore. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Doubling Down with Colin Sheehan. I'm really excited this week to be joined by the Derbyologist, and I found the Derbyologist over on YouTube. He has some excellent content following this year's Kentucky Derby Trail, and you're putting out videos almost every single day from what I've seen. What can people expect to see when they go over to the Derbyologist on YouTube?
Yes, this time of the year, of course, there's a lot of Derby content as we get within 50 days of the Kentucky Derby, and I'll pretty much do that all the way through the Triple Crown. Then we do a few Grade 1 stakes races during the summer, and then we hit the Breeders' Cup pretty hard from September all the way through the first week in November. So, yeah, it's kind of fun to do some different previews of the Kentucky Derby prep races. I like to highlight some of the workouts, highlight horses in maiden ranks, so people seem to kind of just listen along and kind of guide their way through the Derby Triple Crown season.
And what I've always tried to focus on here on Doubling Down is we focus on the daily double because I think it's a great bet for new players. I know the pick 4, pick 5 are where the glitz and the glamour are. We saw some tickets on Twitter today hitting for $15,000, and that's awesome. I'm always cheering for those. But to me, I think for those of you that are new to the race, you got to hit 2 before you can hit 5. And what I've seen on your content is you have some great videos for introductory information to new players. So is that something that you also focus on?
Yes, in the last year, I've kind of started to do some, I guess they're not beginners handicapping videos, but they're more for newbies. So if you know a little bit about handicapping, I think there's a lot of terminology in horse racing. And then you kind of have your 2 phases. Like the first phase is everything's new to you. And then the second phase, I remember I heard a lot of people around me talking about different things and I wasn't quite sure. So that's kind of what those videos are for. I talk about like pace ratings, and I did a video on what are Beyer speed figures, what are Brisnet speed figures. What's the difference of the 2? So, the goal is to kind of, after, Triple Crown season, maybe do about 10 or 12 a year. And they're kind of meant to last for a year or 2. And people will find them. And I did one on how to play a pick 5, how to play daily doubles. So, kind of along this vein, because actually, I think over the last couple of years, my play now is basically I'm down to 2 bets. I play daily doubles and exactas. The pick 5s and pick 4s, like many people out there, too many times you get 3 out of 4 or 4 out of 5. And, a lot of these big favorites are just bet so low, 2 to 5, 3 to 5. It just seems like doubles and exactas, you can get a little bit of money and only have to play that, the takeout once on a daily double.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you play the daily double, because what I like to introduce my guests to is a little bit of some standing. So I have been following. I had my bankroll up to about $55. I've gotten 1 out of 2 about 5 weeks in a row now. So we're down to $20, but I've always been in the green through 26 episodes. Now, as you can see, my guests they've all been in the red. I haven't had many winners. So I bring that up for you, Derbyologist, so that there's no pressure. And you'll see, Vinny is in $44, but he's been on the most shows. So we give him the excuse of you've been here a lot more, and he started chasing. But if you're a daily double player, we are hoping that you can finally break the doubling down curse, because my guests have struggled a little bit. So we decided to go to the big 2 races that I saw on this weekend's card for Saturday, March 18th. The first leg is Oaklawn Park Race 8. This is the Grade 3 Whitmore Stakes. They're going 6 furlongs for 4-year-olds and up. I'm curious to hear how you saw this race and who you went with.
Yes, for this race, actually Whitmore was one of my favorite horses, probably of the last 4 or 5 years. Just one of those horses that really ran in all the big sprint races. And then it was nice to see him finally win that Breeders' Cup Sprint after trying multiple years.
Yeah, at age 7. And it's nice when they bring a horse like that back for us, for someone like you and all of us to continue to enjoy him year after year.
So yeah, this race, when I handicap any race, the first thing I do is I always write down EPS. So that stands for early, your presser, and then your sustained runners. So I always try to put, 5 or 6 contenders in each of those buckets. I always see, like, if I've got 2 or 3 speed horses, a couple of pressers, and then who kind of the closers are. So that's how I normally try to look at a race like this. I usually start there, and then I usually kind of go to the class level. So, I'm looking for horses, since, this isn't at the grade 1 level. I'm looking at some of those listed winners, some horses that might have multiple allowance wins. And with this race, I noticed there was a few horses, it's been kind of a rainy winter at Oaklawn. So I noticed quite a few of these horses that ran on sloppy tracks. So that's always interesting, because it's not so much, I think, sometimes that horses improve on sloppy racetracks. I tend to go in the other direction. A lot of times I think a lot of horses don't like the slop. So then I have to kind of filter out those sloppy races where I thought, this maybe it wasn't the best indicator for those horses. So my top selection in this race, I think we're going to get about 4 to 1. The morning line is not out yet, but I'm going with Tejano Twist. What I like about him is he faced Goodnight the last time. And I'm not so sure what type of year Goodnight's going to have, but Goodnight on that day was like 2 to 5, coming off a layoff. He'd ran some big races last year at Saratoga, some high-profile races at Churchill Downs. But what I liked about, on his best day, Tejano Twist is a closer, and I think he's going to get plenty of speed here. And I thought the last time he made his move just a little bit too soon. He got the inside track and passed about 4 horses real quickly from last. And I think this time, if he can kind of circle them wide and catch a fast track, I think he might be able to catch a horse like Empire of Gold. I'm not sure what to do with Cogburn. I think he may be a little bit over bet. And then I considered a little bit of Morello. I really liked that horse last year. I thought 7 furlongs to a mile could be his best distance. I didn't like the post position draw here. So my second selection is Flash of Mischief, just because I think he could be sitting in that pace presser trip where he could be sitting in second, and he may get first run on Tejano Twist.
This is actually our first time, and we talked for about 2 minutes before we did the show, and this is our first conversation. And you pretty much see the races exactly as I do, which is generally the first thing I go through and look at is what's the pace setup. And most of the time, sometimes it jumps out at me. And for this race, it did, because I saw designations, at least using Brisnet, of 3 horses with E8 and a horse with E7. And that immediately, to me, you've got some speed up front. And the other horses in the race, Spankster, Flash of Mischief, and Baytown Bear, were also similar to what you said with the EPS. They were all in the E's as well. And that is how I landed on the exact same horse on top, which was number 2, Tejano Twist, because I think he is the best closer in this race. And as you had mentioned, exactly what I was going to say is that the last race was on the slop, but prior to that, he had won 3 in a row. So I think you might get a fairly, you said 4 to 1. I'm not the best at figuring out what the odds will be before I even see the morning line. But I went with that horse as well. Flash of Mischief was my first horse I left off. The other direction I went with was Cogburn, who you had also mentioned in there. So it's funny how we kind of saw this very similar. I'm lukewarm on Cogburn. However, this horse is the outside speed. I wrote down, I was intrigued by the 8 Pirate Rick, but I wrote down, does this horse need the lead? Because if this horse doesn't get to the lead, it doesn't win. And with all the other earlier speed that we had talked about previously being in this race, I was concerned that maybe Pirate Rick won't get there. Cogburn will be able to sit on the outside. And if Cogburn is the one that's able to stay up, because I think that of the early speed, that's kind of the horse that I was most interested in. If you think the price is going to dip down, then that, certainly doesn't make me feel all warm and fuzzy, because that's a lukewarm choice. And if you're saying he's going to be low odds, then maybe I make a different decision there. But as we tape this on Wednesday night, Cogburn is the other option that I went with. So I went with the 2 and the 9. I like that Santana stays aboard. I also noticed that this horse is 2 for 3 at Oaklawn Park. I do like to look at how a horse has done over the track, especially the main track. But I use Brisnet and the prime power numbers. There's 5 horses within 1.5 points. So that to me, I want to let everybody know you could go a lot of different options here, because to me that shows that this is a pretty tightly matched race.
Yes, I agree on the tightly matched. I'm not surprised that Prime Power has 4 or 5 horses within a couple of points. Asmussen, he does really well with sprinters the last few years. He does train Goodnight, who did go over to the Middle East. And then, he brings back Morello here. And, again, this horse last year ran in the Gotham. He ran in the Wood Memorial, broke a little bit slow that race. Then they brought him back in the summer. He didn't quite fire. I do think he could have some potential this year to be a good 7 furlong to a miler. So it's interesting that Flavian Prat rides him. Now, Asmussen and, he's kind of switched jockeys around the last couple of years. So we'll have to see. I mean, that horse is one. I don't like the 10th post position in this spot, but I'm assuming right now a fast track. And so I debated, do I go 3 horses in this first leg or 2 horses in this first leg? And I kind of figured, well, you know what? I think no matter what happens and no matter what the odds are, I think Tahano Twist is going to come running late. And I do think I think Cogburn will be a little bit over bet. So I do think we'll get that 7-2, 4-1. That's a solid price in a daily double as you do these shows. All you really need is 1 7-2 or 4-1, and you've got yourself a $30-$40 double sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll take that. We'll take that. And I know any of my guests would as well, as you saw. So Derbyologist goes 2-7 in leg 1, and I go 2-9. I would say I also considered singling Tejano Twist because of the pace setup, and I thought that he was I think he's a strong horse in here. And if you want to do that, I wouldn't fault you, and maybe that allows you to add in a few more in the next race, which, as we move on to race 9, this is for Saturday, March 18th. So we're looking at leg 2 of our daily double. This is the grade 3 Essex handicap, and we're going 1 mile and a 16th over the main track. You have another field of 10, and the interesting, maybe storyline here that I'll start with is number 5, Classic Causeway, who, if you did your Derby videos last year, for sure, that was a horse that we were all very familiar with, who obviously went into the Florida Derby and really retreated, and then showed up in the Kentucky Derby, but didn't do much running, then came back and obviously had that pop on the turf up at Belmont, right, at 27-1, and has since been running on the turf, but after that hasn't made it to the winner's circle, although he's shown some fairly respectable races. But now Kenny McPeak moves Classic Causeway back to the main track in the dirt, going at 1 mile and a 16th. I, along with some others, would probably rather see Classic Causeway maybe in the 7 furlongs, a mile distance, because I think he's shown that really fast early speed. He just hasn't been able to hold on, and maybe a little puzzling. But he has 2 victories at 1 mile and a 16th. I left Classic Causeway off my ticket, as did you. We also have number 10, Last Samurai, who may probably be the favorite. You would probably be better at guessing than I would be, but that's kind of where I saw the favorite coming through. I did like Last Samurai. Where did you decide to go in this leg?
Something to note. I'm not sure if you were playing Tampa Bay last week, but I'm actually down in Florida. I'm from Minnesota, but I was at Tampa Bay, and Classic Causeway was entered Saturday in the Challenger Stakes, and they scratched him. Now this is a much bigger purse, $500,000 versus I think it was 150 at Tampa. And Skippy Longstocking was 2-5 in that race. So I think he actually gets a weaker field, but a bigger purse. I thought he'd kind of finally found a home on the turf. So it surprised me to bring him back on the dirt. I thought, again, I kind of started to look at some of the speed of the race. You've got horses like Forza Dioro, who is usually on the lead with slower fractions. Last Samurai won the last time out, but I don't want to take too short of a price on a horse that's coming out of the 10th post position. and facing other speed. Rated R Superstar is the big closer. So I left Classic Causeway out just because I'm not sure a mile and a 16th is his ultimate distance. And I just still think long term this summer, he's probably going to be in some of those turf races. So that's why I left him out. But if he can maybe find a way to be in that second flight or maybe slow down the fractions, and again, Flavian rides him here, maybe he can kind of milk them and kind of walk the dog on the front end. But I think he's going to be a little bit of an underlay. So I went with some shots in this race. The three that I ended up going with, I went with Necker Island, Forza d'Oro, and Tawnyport. Now, the last race out, Tawnyport, was at the fairgrounds, and he got good around this time last year. He went to the synthetic surface at Turfway. He won the Lexington. He won the Ohio Derby. So I thought the last race was more of a prep, and I think this is a good distance for him. But Forza d'Oro, I've had some good luck in the past. He's getting a little long in the tooth, but I do think those fractions the last time out don't represent his real ability. It was 115, but for some reason the fractions were just slow in that race, but I thought he faced good horses. So I think his odds may go up a little bit. And then Necker Island, another veteran, I think his price could maybe float up to 7 or 8 to 1. And I guess I just didn't want to take Last Samurai because he won the last time. And then Rated R Superstar, we know he's going to come running late. If you want to go with the all closer double, I guess I wouldn't have a problem with taking that if you want to do that as well.
Yeah, and I joked with Matt DeSantis, who's another person on the Trust the Profits here, because he has some connections to the real R-rated superstar, which is Edge, and his father had some wrestling, was involved in wrestling a long time ago. So whenever we see Rated R Superstar, we always have a little laugh in our chat. I decided to leave Rated R Superstar off my list. I also left off Tawnyport and Necker Island. On top, I went with number 2, Vittorio. The second start with Bill Mott, which was attractive to me. Second start off the layoff, which is attractive to me, and Mott's 21% trainer. Last time out, you'll recognize the horse that he lost to, which was Charge It. I really think he's in a position, hopefully, to improve, moving from the Callahan barn to the Mott barn, who's been doing well lately. Last race was a lifetime high figure. If you're a figure player, that caused me a little bit of concern. Maybe he's going to have a setback from that race, but I'm hoping the change in barn, the second off the layoff, are going to be opportunities for this horse to do well, because his previous race before that was in April. So that was a pretty substantial layoff, and you would hope that second time out, Vittorio takes a step forward. He also ran at a mile on the 16th last out, and I thought that was a good effort. So you were coming back to that same distance. That was something that I was intrigued by, number 2, Vittorio. And the other horse that I did use, Last Samurai, part of that for me was the company that this horse has been keeping. This horse has won $1.6 million lifetime and $1.1 million at Oaklawn Park. Let's list some of the names this horse has lost to recently. Art Collector, Proxy, West Willpower, Art Collector again, Olympiad. So when I kind of go down that list, is raced against Defunded, Stiletto Boy, and the speed figures to me fit in. Has been running at a mile and 1/8. The last race he cut back to a mile and the 16th, will be coming late. He had that kind of furious rush there at Oaklawn in the Razorback. That was a grade 3 win that he had. So I am intrigued by Last Samurai, Vittorio, and I also included the number 7 Forza d'Oro, previous grade 3 winner. Similar to what I said about Vittorio in the Bill Mott barn, this is the third start for Forza d'Oro in the Brad Cox barn, and we all know what Brad Cox has been doing. What's interesting about Forza d'Oro is you look back in the past performances, the last 2 races, you don't see this very often. 1, 2, 3 were the exact same with Happy American, Mr. Wireless, Forza d'Oro. I had to double check to see if my eyes were causing me troubles here. But if this horse steps forward, which I think he can, because he's shown it in the past, at least from a speed figure standpoint, earned 102, 108, 103 going by Brisnet. Now, granted, those were, 2020, 2021, but I'm hoping that move to the Brad Cox barn, he's just coupled a 95 and a 94 in a grade 3 race, gets those 2 that he's had trouble passing, and hopefully takes that step forward. So I go 2 Vittorio, 7 Forza d'Oro, 10 Last Samurai. That ticket will cost you $6. As I like to say, Derbyologist, is that they can't blame us if we're only costing them $6, unlike when we have to put together maybe a pick 4, pick 5, which is, $50, $60, $70. Then you can give me gruff. But those $6 tickets are another reason that I enjoy the daily double. And maybe you press with Tejano Twist and Last Samurai was something that I considered as maybe a backup ticket if that daily doubles probable is going to be low. And that's something that I also encourage on this show, is to go into wherever you bet and look at what the probables are, so you know how much you're spending and what you're going to be getting back. That's a great advantage of the only advantage you have in the daily double, as opposed to like a pick 3, pick 4, or a pick 5. I have to get your impressions before you go on this year's Derby crop. It's March 15th. We have one more big round of the 100-point races. Forte is obviously, one that's gathered everybody's attention, especially with Arabian Night stepping out of the spotlight. What are you thinking so far?
Yes, Forte has definitely been impressive. I think he's got the most complete resume. He defeated Loggins in the Keeneland Futurity. He beat Cave Rock, comes off the bench, runs a 98 Beyer speed figure, 103 on the Brisnet scale. So he's definitely, I think people have kind of separated the top three with him and Practical Move and Tapit Trice. I'm kind of on the Tapit Trice bandwagon. I just think that he is going to love 10 furlongs. Now, whether he can get out of the gate and be close enough to make an impact at the top of the stretch, but if you get a little bit of a speed fractions, I just like the stride on Tapit Trice. So that's where I'm leaning right now. But Forte, he's done nothing wrong, and he's defeated every horse that they've put in front of him. And he's won on a sloppy track. He's won on short fields. He won at 5 furlongs. He's won 3 times at a mile and 16th. Like, you can't fault him. He may not win it, but there's very few holes to poke in that resume.
Yep, similar to Epicenter last year, who I always thought was the best going into it, and ultimately did end up being the best 3-year-old, although you can argue that for sure with Taba, and the Eclipse Awards ended up, I guess if you want to use that as a barometer, proved it out. But it's just like any sport. The best team might not always win on that day. Obviously, there was a certain pace scenario that set up that was to the detriment of Epicenter, but I think it showed even how much better he was being able to stay on top of that. But I think you're correct in saying that there is there's Forte and everyone else to me, although you will definitely be on El Hombre's good pages, because he loves Tapit Trice, and you must have watched my videos, because everyone knows my attraction to Loggins. He's my boy, and I'm disappointed that he's fallen off the trail, but you will quickly endeavor yourself with us here at Trust the Profits. Also, I want to give a quick shout out. I've designed these Trust the Profit shirts. If you go onto our shop, you'll be able to purchase one. And I'll have a live giveaway coming up on the lounge, which happens on Thursday nights. We do live handicapping. We have an excellent chat room. So please stop on by. Derbyologist, thanks so much for stopping by. Thanks for doing this. Everyone, please go over and like and subscribe to the Derbyologist on YouTube. He has some great content he's pumping out every single day. Don't forget to like and subscribe us right here on Trust the Profits. I really hope we can finally get one of these daily doubles home for everybody. And I hope you all have a great St. Patrick's Day. Enjoy the weekend.